Hello, ladies and gentlemen. And so this video I did not want to make. Um, on my YouTube page, I'm subscribed to conservatives and liberals because I want to hear, the opinions from the left and the right. Anyway, one of the voices for a while that I've been watching and maybe not always agreeing with, but hearing, I thought was a rational conservative opinion, Steven Crowder. Now, do I think he's so rational? No. I think he's a homophobic asshole. The reason why I call Steven Crowder a homophobic asshole is because he did a video literally about how the AIDS epidemic was a hoax. Yeah. Let's look at this shit.
In the 80s, the media and governments of the world warned of an impending catastrophe, one that could end civilization as we know it. The epidemic of HIV/AIDS. Yes, in the 1980s and early 90s, the message was clear. No one was safe from the silent non-killer that is AIDS. AIDS, oh no! Many people had the wolves before their eyes with this hoax. But with the media aflutter over the latest doomsday scenario, activists were quick to vilify skeptics and reasonable doubters. So the city of New York estimated that 400,000 residents had AIDS. The commissioner himself, John C. Joseph, said that the estimate was actually less than half that. Little did he know that he lit a powder keg. Leaders of AIDS organizations and social activist groups accused him of minimizing the crisis.
Did minimize the crisis. He did minimize the crisis. AIDS wasn't just the gay disease. It wasn't just gay cancer. It was affecting straight people and babies and even animals. Animals, since have had unfortunate predisposition to the version of HIV/AIDS in animals. Not all animals have it, but a few animals have unfortunate predispositions to the disease. But here's the thing, though. AIDS just doesn't affect gay people. I have to reiterate this. Because what it does is it affects straight people, and it affected a child, Ryan White. And I'll get to that as soon as he talks about the false statistics, how heterosexuals cannot get AIDS whatsoever.
It turns out he was entirely correct, but no matter. The tone had been set. In a hyperly politicized climate, lobbyists dug in their heels, setting the stage for the silent non-killer AIDS to become the single most research-funded disease in modern history of America. Despite it being a fiscal non-risk factor, we demand more money!
A fiscal non-risk factor. Really? You're going to play down AIDS as a non-fiscal risk factor? May I remind you that people have died from this? Most of the gay community's elders aren't alive because of AIDS.
This horrible disease, which, contrary to popular belief, afflicts people of all shapes, sizes, and sexual orientations. Only that wasn't true at all.
No, that was true. that people, regardless of sexual orientation, can be affected by AIDS. But here's the thing, though. Of course, the government had to put money into the research. So don't call it a a non-fatal fiscal. It's a fatal disease, and government had to put money into it. And the same guy that got diagnosed with brain cancer, John McCain, was one of the few Republicans that actually advocated Congress fund research to look into AIDS. So that's something you won't hear about McCain from Democrats or Republicans, I should say Trump Republicans, but you will hear it from people who are of old-time Congress. Old-time Congress. And John McCain, one of the few who actually advocated for AIDS research from the Republican Party.
Statistically, the CDC put heterosexual Americans' chance of contracting AIDS at 0%. With 92.
Right there. How he said 0% of, heterosexuals don't get AIDS. Bullshit. I watched a video done by Cold to Dusty, and he responded to the same video, and he said that most new cases of HIV is from heterosexual people. But remember I mentioned Ryan White earlier? Well, Ryan White was a kid that needed a blood transfusion, and unfortunately, the blood bag that he got had AIDS in it. He got HIV AIDS from it. And he lived for about 5 or 6 years with it before he died from AIDS. And the rest of his time on Earth, he didn't, just sit around and suffer from it. He actually went around the country, went around to schools, and talked about what AIDS does to the body. So he was an advocate of HIV research, even though he had 5 to 6 years left to live. So he used his time wisely before he passed away. And he wanted to do it. He wasn't told to do it. He actually wanted to do it.
2% of all cases stemming directly from male-to-male sexual contact, and the majority of the remainder are coming from intravenous drugs, but clawing at the hundreds of millions of dollars in government grants, fear-mongering Rand.
It's not fear-mongering. It's not fear-mongering when you have people dropping dead from HIV. It's not fear-mongering because it fucking happened, you idiot. It fucking happened. I have a personal story that involves HIV, AIDS. I'll get to that later on. But what I want to stress here is that it's not fear-mongering when it actually happened. Swine flu. Okay, there was a bit of fear-mongering there. What was it? A couple of years back it happened. That disease that people got if they were serving with Doctors Without Borders over in Africa. Ebola. Once again, that was fear-mongered. Swine flu was fear-mongered, but HIV was not. AIDS was not fear-mongered because it was actually happening. And before you say HIV is a hoax, again, Mr. Crowder, just look at Africa, a country savaged by AIDS. Savaged by AIDS. You're just as useful as Pope John Paul II going to Africa and telling people that not to use condoms because they offend God.
Deliberately being, in fact, one of the most cited landmark studies, 173,000 AIDS cases among no-risk victims. Conductors were later caught funging their data, having to reverse over 46% of the non-respected victims to be reclassified.
Non-risk victims? HIV killed those fucking people, you idiot. There was a lot of people, more than the numbers you're showing, that died from AIDS in the 1980s and early latter half in the 1990s. So don't tell me that there were no risk victims. It was definitely a fucking risk. It was a death sentence. You know, you had borrowed time if you were diagnosed with HIV in the 1980s and early 1990s. You had fucking borrowed time.
But by that point, the damage had been done. But I know it, dog. I just know it.
Mr. Hopper, I'm going to shoot you. You do not have AIDS.
But all my hair is falling out.
That's just your summer coat.
But my balls fell off.
Hopper, you had those surgically removed 5 years ago.
Oh. But hindsight is 2020. In the moment, everyone believes this silent, non-killer AIDS to truly be an epidemic. Even though the chances of contracting it short of anal sex with gay strangers while shooting heroin was statistically non-existent.
Okay. You know, Stephen, your facts are way off here. You know, yes, while AIDS in itself, while in the 1980s, yes, most gay men had it. Most gay men had it in the 1980s. That's true. But also, it wasn't just gay men that had it. It was drug users. It was also prostitutes, strippers, you name it. But here's the thing, though. Babies got it too. From if a woman who was a drug user and was dying from AIDS, they performed a early C-section to save the baby, and there were babies born with AIDS. Okay, there were babies born with AIDS, and there's a fantastic movie. It's a real great film. It's called A Place for Annie. It stars Sissy Spacek, who played Carrie in the movie based on the Stephen King bestseller. Who takes care of this HIV child, but this child lives. She cures this child. She saves this baby, but she was told that she was setting herself up for heartbreak, and she knew that could have been a possibility, but she took that chance because she always wanted a child, but she never had one. She never got married in this movie. So she took the opportunity, even if it was for a short time, of taking care of an HIV baby that was born from an early C-section of a HIV AIDS infected drug use mother. So it wasn't only gay men that were getting it, but yes, that was originally what started all this homophobia in America, was that gay men had this type of disease or cancer that they would spread to children and all that shit. That was the message back then. That was the message in the 1980s. And that's how the whole gay men are homophobes. And no, sorry, the gay men are pedophiles. That's it. But yeah, I mean, I got to do a video sometime about how there are some gay men within the LGBT community that are actually homophobes towards their own fellow gay men. It's ridiculous, but I got to do a video on that someday. But yeah, that's how the whole gay men are pedophiles thing started, because in the 1980s, nobody knew what AIDS was. So it was only gay men getting sick from this stuff. And, you know, it wasn't until Ryan White got HIV that they realized it's just not gay men that are getting this. It's also drug users, prostitutes, strippers, and even children.
Matter of fact, the chances of a straight person contracting HIV in the modern world is 4 in 10,000 for exposure.
You know, that's a high risk number. You know, that's a very high risk number you use there. You got this from the CDC website. I see Dusty Smith pull up the website and show this. That's a high risk number. This is penis going into vagina sex. Okay? Now that's a high risk number if you're a heterosexual guy. But for heterosexual women, their chances are 8 in 10,000. That's still a high number, but not as high as 4 in 10,000.
Meaning that if a man were even married to an HIV-infected bride, he'd have to engage in intercourse with her an average of 10,000 separate occasions to expose himself to contracting AIDS.
No. You don't have to have sex with a heterosexual more than 10,000, 100,000 fucking times in order to get HIV, you idiot. You could do it 5 times or even 20 times within a relationship, or what? Let's just say 20,000 times within 10 years. You could still get within a short amount of time.
But for decades, among all the pandemonium, none of this mattered. Math, statistical realities were all tossed aside for fear of being called a bigot. Tom Hanks made a movie.
No, you fucking idiot. Philadelphia is based on the AIDS epidemic. It's based on actually what fucking happened. There was no science and math that was ruled out. My Aunt Nancy, my late Aunt Nancy, she passed away in May, but she told me that she worked for a doctor that dealt with AIDS patients, and she's seen so many AIDS patients. She's seen so many of them. And I remember my Aunt Nancy telling me that if an AIDS patient died, there wasn't enough medication, so they would reuse the medication on another patient that was recently diagnosed. So there was medicine and mathematics going into trying to make a life-saving medicine, but thank heavens, by the time the 1990s rolled around, when Magic Johnson was diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, that the cocktail was fucking introduced. The cocktail saved Magic Johnson's life, and they realized this will work for people. Okay? So don't tell me that math and science wasn't on the right side of history. It was on the right side of history, and Tom Hanks did a movie based on the AIDS epidemic. Did it exaggerate some truths? Yeah, it's a movie. There was some liberties taken out. It exaggerated some truths, but it mostly kept what happened.
See your case.
Oh, Tom Hanks, you truly are a talent. Why'd you have to do Da Vinci Code? Well, through the 1990s, funding continued to soar for the entirely preventable disease, while countless Americans, including millions of children, died of diseases helplessly, entirely out of their control, with actual mortality rates.
What he's actually showing here, this is a picture of the AIDS blanket. The AIDS blanket, the memorial blanket. It's actually estimated to be bigger, war memorial wall. But anyway, so basically, there were children that died of AIDS, and their names are on that fucking blanket. All around, just as much as adults. But yeah, there were children who died of AIDS too. So you're talking about children that also died of HIV/AIDS.
Celebrity awareness campaign and received a fraction of the funding.
No, they did not receive a fraction of the fucking funding. You idiot. I could tell you who received the fraction of funding after I scold your ass.
Yes, the AIDS epidemic hoax is one of the greatest ever perpetrated in the American public, and one that inadvertently cost millions of lives of actual victims.
So gay people, LGBT people aren't actual victims because they like to suck pussy or suck dick? Really? You're a homophobic asshole.
Takes a valuable lesson to be learned. You children's lives and stop stealing the research dollars by taking these simple steps. Easily avoid the silent non-killer.
So really, as long as you're not having unprotected anal sex with strangers or sharing needles, you have nothing to worry about. Also, stop fighting hobos.
Oh, because I did fight them that one time. Wait, are you saying hobos or homos?
No. Hobos. Don't fight hobos.
Okay, are you saying hobos or homos? I'm still not clear.
No. Hobos. You know what? Just play safe. Don't fight either.
What's the story, Hopper? All the bastard Hopper.
This video, subscribe by clicking the button that says subscribe. If you're not aware of it now, there's no way you're looking.
So, isn't that probably one of the most infuriating fucking things you'll ever see? Look. Children's lives are important. So are the lives of adults. And this guy considers himself pro-life. I'm actually more pro-life than he is. I consider myself pro-life, but I am for universal health care. I am for the rights of fetuses to live. I am for ending the death penalty. I am for, letting women keep the right to an abortion if it's necessary. If it's necessary for them to get an abortion to save their life, that's pro-life too. Steven Crowder is not pro-life. He's pro-birth. Let's be honest. He's fucking pro-birth. And what boggles my mind is that, to say that, oh, it's not worth it funding research for gay men or gay women, but let's fund, children's cancer and all that. Okay. Yeah, we should fund children's cancer, and we do. But do you see us as a nation ignoring HIV? Because children also get that shit too. Or through molestation. Yeah, there were children who were unfortunately given HIV by priests. That's how great some Catholic priests are, They molest kids, have something as dangerous as HIV, and they still molest the children, and some of those children actually did die. And they weren't gay people either. They were straight men. They were actually straight men. Some of these priests actually found out to have wives, which is actually goes against, Catholicism teaching, but that's fun hypocrisy. But the thing is that at the end of the day, AIDS is an epidemic. AIDS is an epidemic. And you can't dispute that. You can't, try to deconstruct it, because it's true. It is an epidemic. And you don't have to fuck somebody vaginally or anally to get AIDS. You could get through a fucking blood transfusion. And here's the story they said they have that involves HIV/AIDS is this. My great-grandmother's sister, who is the aunt of my late Aunt Nancy, my uncle, my surviving Uncle Andy and surviving grandmother, surviving Grandma Mary, her aunt had two boys, Richie and Rooney. Well, these poor guys got drafted into the Vietnam War against their will, like most young men of the time. And while they were there, they were with a lot of men, and they found out that they were gay. They found out that they were gay. Rooney, on the other hand, as soon as he, a year or so after he got back from war, he moved out to California. He said that he was going to California to see a friend. And people at home were like, yeah, okay. Home meaning New York. People at home were like, okay, whatever. A year goes by. Rooney's not back. Okay. So obviously, you know, he either moved in and didn't say anything, or, you know, moved and people at home just didn't pay attention. No, he actually moved there without saying anything. But then Richie was sent to California to look for Rooney. A year later, another year later, Richie's at home. Okay. Now, like Rooney, moved to California after looking for Rooney and realizing that he liked California better than New York. So he moved to California without telling anybody. Okay, so now mysteriously, both of them moved to California without saying anything. Okay, whatever. But when I forget who it was. I think it was either, it had to be Dottie. It had to be Dottie that went to California with a friend to look for Richie and Rooney, okay? Now, this was maybe a week after she realized that Richie wasn't coming home. And she found her son Richie, dressed as a nun, roller skating in San Francisco. And that's how she found out that they were gay. And so, you know, a year or so later, Richie, no, it was Rooney first. Rooney got diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. And then not that long after Rooney, then Richie got diagnosed with it. Well, Rooney and Richie moved back to New York so they could be close to home. They knew it was a death sentence, so they wanted to die around family. They wanted to die around family. And Rooney died first. Rooney died first in 1980, I think 84, 85. And then Richie died a year later, I think in 86 or 87. Then not that long after Richie, maybe a little over a year or maybe close to a year after Richie died, Aunt Dottie went into the hospital to have a procedure to get a stent in to remove a blood clot. Well, whatever, this was a tragic procedure. This was supposed to be an easy procedure that was supposed to be done. But what happened was when they had to cut into her leg in order to put the stent in. But what happened was the blood clot shot to her heart and killed her right then and there. Not long after her sons. So 2 of my cousins died of HIV/AIDS. So, Stephen, you might want to ask them if HIV is not an epidemic. Okay, you might want to ask them, but you can't because they're dead. Now, I want to stress this. You could try to be funny all you want. You can try to wrap your homophobia in so many jokes as you possibly can, but you cannot disguise that you're a homophobe. This video I responded to you. I tackled your ass down just using my basic fact. and basic knowledge of the AIDS epidemic, of what actually happened, while you say that's a hoax. What's next? Are you going to say 9/11 is a hoax? Oh, speaking of, you want to know what took a good chunk of the profit from a funding? See this? After September 11th, okay, now the Red Cross started a foundation called the September 11th Fund, as the sticker says on here. Now, so I believe, yeah, so this book was put out, and proceeds from this book would go to the September 11th Fund, and this would go to the of the victims' families of September 11th, right? Okay, now, here's the problem. Guess who was taking some of the funding? The Red Cross. The victims' families were getting shit from this. They got some of it, but the Red Cross took a lot more of it. The Red Cross took a lot from the September 11th Fund. Celebrities that advocated AIDS research didn't take any funding from the AIDS Foundation. The Red Cross took money from the same foundation that was meant to fund the victims' families. So, you tell me an event that happened, and I'll tell you what you're lying about. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. See ya.